The the part where racial stuff started coming into play was, I'd say, about 6, 7, when I would just hear them say slurs, and then I'd repeat them because I didn't understand what they were, and I was told, "Oh, don't say that in public. Don't say this. Don't." And I was like, "Oh, it's just a bad word. It's just like any other obscenity. It's just a bad word." And I didn't understand the difference between like a regular curse word and a slur, and like a racial, kind of, point. Like I didn't, I'm a child.
And these are your parents that you're hearing just saying this around the house?
I was only with my father for maybe a year, with shared custody, but the abuse is how we got separated. But she had my mother married another man in Columbus, where I was born, and then we moved to a small rural town. Like, we're talking like 4,000 people in the main town, 600 people in another town connected, 300 people, like, caught like 2 red lights in a grocery store, like that kind of town.
Okay.
So that's where a lot of it came out, because Columbus was very diverse, and like, not super. I mean, this is early 2000s. So when we moved to this small town, this like an hour from Columbus, I'll even say the name of it. It's Dawson, Georgia. We lived in different areas around, so like outskirts of town, in the town, a town connecting, like, 10 minutes away. And this is like small Farmerville kind of, raise hell, praise Dale kind of community. So the thought process and the way of thinking of different cultures was not very, it wasn't very good.
So so, I mean, you're saying like you were raised sort of like, and there was a lot of like racism and homophobia, like, at what age did that become very like noticeable, and why do you feel that way? Like, looking back, like, what were some examples of things?
So it started more or less with the racial. So it started with, like, we would watch a movie, and if it had like a black lead, like a black actor who was the lead, they would change it, and I'd be like, why? I was watching that. Well, we don't watch, and they say a slur, we don't watch them on the TV. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess we don't do that. Or if it was anything other than white, or if I were to watch movies or TV that had more of a different, diverse lead group of actors, actresses, or any kind of positive outlook on anything besides white culture, it was frowned upon. I was made fun of for it. I was told I was a slur lover, like that kind of thing. And we're talking, I'm not even a teenager yet.
Jeez. Yeah, you said you were around 8 to 10 or something?
Yeah, this is a pattern. So it started about 8, like I noticed it at 8. And then from 10, it kind of escalated, because that's about the time we moved out of Columbus into this smaller town. Mm-hmm. Because we had visited years prior, and I got it. So here's the thing. Racism is spoon fed to you. It's not like what you see in movies. It's not really shoved in your down your throat. It's slowly fed to you. But some bites are bigger than others. Sometimes you do get a big bite, and you're like, oh, this is a lot to chew on, and you have a choice to spit it out or swallow it. And me, I was always half and half, because I wanted to trust my parents, or parent at the time. So I thought, oh, they know best. They're the ones raising me, like that. I was a very logical child to a degree, but also very ignorant. But that was because I was being raised in ignorance.
Mm-hmm. Was there any black people in your town?
Here's what's funny. The majority were black.
So how was your parent or your guardians, like, interactions with black people when you would be at like the supermarket or anything like that?
Well, my mother is a narcissistic, two-faced, backstabbing liar. I'll be honest. Like, to put it, that's the sweetest way I can put it. And so she'd be friendly, and then she would even have people. She's like, oh, they're one of the good ones. Like, that's a big phrase I know everyone's heard at least once. Oh, she's or they're one of the good ones. And it's like, what does that mean? Like, it's such a hard thing to even explain, even though I was raised in it, that the ignorance is so bliss and it's alive. It's like when you watch it, you're like, this is a prank, right? Like this isn't real. And they're like, no, this is happening right now.
Do you remember
It's
at that age any confusion, or could you try to, walk us through what
um
you were feeling? Because I think that's such a great analogy that you said of being spoon fed and sort of, indoctrined into this way of thinking. But then, yeah, you go out of the house and you see black people at the supermarket. I would imagine it's confusing as you're trying to wrap your mind around, what this all means and how the world works in the perspective that, you're starting to gain.
so the reality I built, and I say I built because like we all have to build our own perception of what we're raised in. And my perception is, oh, when we're out in public, it's everybody can be friendly. Like to me, I thought everyone was like this. I thought black people were like this, Mexican people. I really thought we all went out in society and we all played along and we got along. But when we got home, that's when, you would say the slurs or feel like animosity or like, oh, I don't want them over the house. I thought that was just normal. I thought everybody did that. And what happened to break that cycle is that I went to the public school. So
Welcome back to Breakdown Friday. Joseph Ward, Patrick Irvin, Professor Carl Tone Jones, and we are here breaking down the making of a racist. So we just listened to a clip of a young man explaining his experience growing up in a household with a mother and a stepfather who basically raised him to be racist in an all-black town, and he's giving the mindset and the steps that go to it. And there's a lot of keywords and things that he talked about in this. Of course, showing the whole thing, make this would be here all day. Can't do that, so I gave you a clip, but I did watch more of it so I can give some more context as well. But this is something we want to dive into because this gives us more insight into our enemy and how our enemy thinks, how our enemy operates. So, hey, Pat, man, let's start with you. This was I thought this clip was interesting. I thought the whole interview was interesting. Like, what are your overall thoughts on what you just heard about this young man explaining his experience of being raised to be racist?
It pretty much agrees with my experience dealing with racists that have kind of white supremacists that have felt comfortable enough to share.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember now. I spent a number of years in the military. I definitely rubbed elbows with my share of racists, and in that environment, they feel comfortable and emboldened to share.
Okay.
Now, I'm not broadcasting that across the entire military. I'm saying during my time, I ran into an environment that was very much supportive of that type of energy, and so the people thrived in it and they shared. So, and there, I recognize some elements of what he was saying about it starting small and it being, spoon fed, and then them being taught how to maneuver in public. White supremacists very much code switch too. That's not a minority only thing. Like everybody code switches.
We're one thing about this that's great to me is we find out that we're not that much different.
And that's exactly what I was getting to. A lot of the things that he's alluding to that he thought everybody did, but now he sees that they don't. I'm like, no, to a degree, everybody does do those things. To a degree. Nobody walks around in public interacting with people the way they talk about them at home. There are very few people that do that.
Right.
But there are very few. And then when you're talking, so you might find some individuals that do it. But when you're talking about groups of people, no, that's not happening. That's not happening. And so, so everybody code switches. Everybody has these things that they know are not to be shared in public. But then when they get home, everybody's indoctrinating their kids into their way of thinking. And what is most interesting to me is how we specialize the other, right? So in that, it's like The current antidote for racism is dialogue. You got to talk, right? And
Yeah.
what I've always found interesting about that antidote is that it doesn't do anything but make you the special other. When a racist white supremacist or whatever is interacting with you and they think you're different, it doesn't change their perspective of everybody. It changes their perspective of you. You become the different nigga amongst all the niggas. And I think that key component of racism and of group psychology is something that is missed. As an individual, there is no dialogue you can have that is going to change the opinion of a racist, of a hardcore extremist. No, you become the different other, but I still got to kill the rest of you niggas. And if you put up too much of an issue, nigga, I'll kill you too.
Well, it's also reinforcement of stereotypes for the white people as well. When you exude certain behavioral characteristics, yeah, we do see you as an individual, but I knew you niggas act like that.
It's a because we're not addressing the way people think and process information. People are constantly seeking to confirm what they already know, confirmation bias. So if you become the different nigga, then I can still hold my beliefs about all of the niggas by saying that you're the different nigga. And then the moment you act like the rest of the niggas, I knew you niggas.
Well, and
It's a lose-lose.
their perception of that reinforcement doesn't even have to be real. Actually, it just has to be real to them. So, for an example, I was watching a video. It was one of them little crazy dating videos, and the guy was rejected by a girl, and one of the reasons she rejected him because he was from Alabama, and she was like, "Well, you Alabama people are backwards in country. Don't you marry your cousins?" And she was like, "Well, I've been to Alabama once." And I saw it, so I know it's real. I'm like, you ain't go to Alabama and see no cousins get married, but you went to Alabama and you saw certain behavioral characteristics that was enough to be confirmation for you to say these people are backwards. That's all people need, and we have to realize that. But
And I'm
you know,
landed.
right. But it gets into the shaping of people's minds, the shaping of people's perceptions, how people are socialized, especially how a race is socialized, but also how people are socialized. Because one thing we're going to get into is racism versus discrimination. Everybody's not racist, but we all discriminate. So, PC, what are your thoughts on this video of this young man explaining his experience?
Well, I ain't never been to Alabama, but I've been to Mississippi.
Hey,
Uh,
Mississippi.
uh, I think I'm not surprised. I've actually seen it. And you know, the irony is, people think because you live in the North, you don't get to see, you know, open racism or even racism that's poorly veiled. But there's a saying about Pennsylvania: everything west of Philadelphia is Pennsylvania. So, you know, you get to see it. And in Philly, you got neighborhoods that black people aren't necessarily welcome to. You got Port Richmond, the area near the river that when you had the uprisings in 2020, they were outside talking about, we're waiting for you niggas to come on our block, this, that, and the other. You had, I went to Bloomsburg University in the early 90s. That's north central Pennsylvania. That's literally about 2 hours away from Penn State's main campus. And I'm gonna tell you, you get to see a lot. We, as a black student, or as they identified us back then, a student of color, for which we proudly held, you know, the brainwashing is intense.
Yeah, we colorful.
We were actually, you know, deemed to be sort of like racism 101 facilitators. And so we would be a part of this whole thing where they would invite people from the different townships around Bloomsburg to learn about racism, which is ironic. It was ironic because the majority of the people there had never met anybody black. It was really ironic to hear somebody say you're the first black person I ever met. But my impression of you is based on what I've seen on the news and TV. Or
So well.
my right, or I don't like black people because this one time I was in McDonald's, this black girl was working behind the counter and she was rude to me. She happened to be black. So my impression of all black people was, like Patrick was saying, the confirmation bias.
Reinforced by what they learned at home or in the community.
Right, because I also went to college with some cats, and they would get real comfortable around you, and they start telling these jokes. And one guy told this joke about he was moving bowling balls, right? And so in the back of a truck, but then these three black guys went to the back of the truck. I guess I don't know how they ended up in the back of the truck, but somebody went back in the back of the truck and said, "Holy shit! Whatever you was carrying in those eggs, 3 of them hatched." And they were, but he was referring to the 3 black guys in the back of the truck. And I'm sitting there thinking like, damn, dude, the joke ain't funny. And then, somebody else is sitting next to me is like, I guess that's the whole point of it, isn't it? I'm looking at him like, because you can tell he was a stone racist who happened to be on the same wing that I was on when I was on campus. And I'm not surprised by this because as a therapist, I worked with white clients out in the county of Philadelphia, part of Pennsylvania. And I would hear some of the notions that were brought up, even the ones that seemed innocent. Like one of the kids, he's grown now, but one of the kids, he got upset because a black kid at his school was having a birthday party. And when he asked why he wasn't invited, the kid said, "It's a black thing, you wouldn't understand." So the kid came home and said to his mother with tears in his eyes, "I thought that's what Dr. Martin Luther King died for." And I was sitting there looking at her like, why the fuck didn't you correct him?
Right.
It's like he wasn't Jesus dying for our sins, But that's the type of shit and see, so that becomes like the liberal benevolent version of what we're talking about. The liberal, we're better than them because we're not using the N-word, this, that, and the other. But picture your painting, it's still racist. And as far as I'm concerned, everybody, black people included, are indoctrinated to be stewards of racism, white supremacy, until proven otherwise.
Right. Everybody in America.
So if you, and I brought this up, I think we had a group therapy session a couple days ago. And we talked about the hostility that black people have towards each other, not to flip the script, because I don't want to make it seem as though I'm sort of like softening the blow on the fact we're identifying how these racists, white supremacists are created and formed. But we're talking about the hostility that we have for one another and how at a very young age, we're taught to see each other, through the lens of some sort of vendetta, or we're taught to have a level of hostility towards one another, but we treat the white man that wanders into our neighborhood or the white lady that rolls down her window and needs direction, we treat them like they're special, pietist creatures.
Yeah.
Which speaks to the fact that white supremacy work is even we have those conversations about don't trust that nigga over there, that nigga ain't shit, fuck that nigga. Excuse the language for the folk, because I know people are bothered by it, but I'm using this to express the type of language that's so common. It's so common. I've done this with like several groups of students. I said, go home for the weekend. Don't use the word nigga or bitch. Instead, replace it with the word brother or sister. And tell me how the response is. And tell me how you feel about that, how the conversations go. Without fail, whether it was middle school, whether it was high school, or whether it was college students. They all came back the same way the next week. Oh, Mr. Jones, why did you do that? You know how hard it was to have that conversation? I couldn't say it with the same anger and the same vigor. I said, yeah, because you added a human quality to that person. And it dehumanizes, it demeans us, and and it takes away from our humanity when you refer to yourselves as niggas and bitches. It makes it easy for you to harm somebody, easier for you to kill. So if black people are learning this, how do we not expect white people to be moving in this set in the same way when we know, historically speaking, the lineage just passed down, the conversations they have around the dinner table, the breakfast table, about how you're supposed to interact with people. They still have those conversations. Their children ain't all sitting in front of a tablet. In most of those homes, they're made to sit down at the table and talk about their day. And these are
Well,
the
yeah.
conversations I've observed myself.
Well, that's that PTSS though. That's that PTSS of why we see ourselves the way we see ourselves, why we behave amongst each other the way we do. Like we've said in here ad nauseum, we've been trained to be insane, especially towards each other. We've been trained to see each other as enemies. Now, couple things that stood out to me, what he was talking about for just overall, like I said in the beginning, this is giving us insight into how a racist is made, how racism, the system of racism is maintained and passed down from generation to generation. Spoon fed is a word that he used. So, which means is every day there's a dosage that they have to take. So it takes me back to all of those movies that we watch when they the mind control, the brain control movies, when they're conditioning a mass of people to behave in a specific way. Every day you have to get your dosage. So so that's intentional because he used the word my parents were ignorant. I disagree that his parents were ignorant. I think his parents understood, or either consciously or subconsciously, that the maintenance of the system of white supremacy and the passing it down. Because what they did with him and how he described it, it was deliberate actions. It was not something that would just, oh, well, we said these words and we didn't mean it. No, we're creating an environment to where we don't like them niggas and we teaching you not like them niggas. We're teaching you to be white first, think white, eat white, sleep white, breathe white. Everything is white. White is better than black. Black is inferior to white. They were teaching him to think like that. That's intentional. So that goes past that. That's beyond ignorance. That's maintenance. And we as black people, we can't make white people say the words that we want them to say how we want to say, but we need to hear what people are saying and be able to process it properly. He can say what he wants. That's not ignorance, that's maintenance. And also we're talking about racism versus discrimination because he was talking about at one point he was talking about when he would go to school, it wasn't part of this clip, I don't think, but when he would go to school, he would ask his friends, are they taught racism in the home? And his friends was like, no. And I was thinking, but well, yeah, it was hit on earlier though, because if we're being honest, every group of people are taught to discriminate. Every group of people are taught to be group first. There's nothing wrong with discrimination. There's nothing wrong with group first. It's the problem when it comes to harming others, because everybody discriminates against things. If you really think about what discrimination means, I discriminate against macaroni and cheese. Just an example. But we're all taught to discriminate, but we're also all taught like group superiority, group inferiority. So that's why if you go into some homes, and of course, we're not making, like said earlier, we're not making a blanket statement that all people of all groups of people do this, but there are a number of people who do it. Inside that home, you're going to learn certain words, you're going to learn certain things or mindsets, you're going to hear things. Hey, we talk about white people this way, we talk about Hispanics this way, we talk about Asians this way, we talk about black people this way, we talk about everybody this way, because why? This is how we talk when we comfortable around ourselves. And like both of you all explained, because I have been in environments where white people got comfortable with me and said some things, but not I don't believe as much as they didn't divulge as much as me as they did with you all. But hearing them talk about black people the way they talk about black people, hearing them express what they were taught, hearing them express what they saw. They were in environments where white people were like, we are superior, these Negroes are inferior, and this is what we need to do to maintain our position. If we're looking at it, any other kind of way, I believe we're wasting our time. And this is not something we need to even get our feelings caught up in. We need to be looking at this from a strategic standpoint.
Well, and that's why I don't. In this particular case, I do think he can't use ignorant because of some of the things he said, even in this clip. We don't watch movies with niggas in it.
That's deliberate.
Yeah, like that is deliberate. I think for the vast majority of white people or people, period, that are supporting the system, but are not as what you would label as racist. I think there's a level of ignorance at play there. And I think as black people and as any person that's a part of a group that's struggling with oppression, getting caught up in the intentions is silly to me.
Outcomes.
Right. Outcomes. It doesn't matter whether or not you tried to punch me in the stomach. You punched me in the stomach. Like it doesn't matter if you accidentally caused the blade to slam into my shin and cut my foot off. I don't have a foot. Like, so I think that's one of the things that we get so caught up in is intentions and intentionality. And intentions only matter, in my opinion, when you're dealing with somebody that you have an intimate relationship with, be it a friendship, a family member, or whatever. You might give them a bit of a pass, but at the end of the day, your intentions still don't supersede the outcomes. The outcomes are still what matters at the end of the day. But I think one of the things that is always going to be interesting when it comes to this debate is the piece of people being able to be real about what's actually happening and being able to look down the line and actually see it and call it out. Like right now, if you were to say people are indoctrinated to hate black folk, everybody would rise up and start saying, well, that's not the image of America I have.
Right.
And it's like, it doesn't matter. The image you have is false. Look at the outcomes.
Well, so going back, because that takes me back to the original video that I shared. I was thinking about breaking down the Nikki Haley video when she's talking about America has never been a racist country, but America had racism. But what the fuck does that mean? But you're saying America's never been a racist country, but look at the racist outcomes that have come from the people practicing racism in America. So that's an example of what you're talking about. But we have to, like I say, we have to look at it from a strategic standpoint. PC always preaching that we at war. We don't disagree with him. We are at war. It used to be a time in the past where we didn't really get how PC was saying it, but we get it now. We are at war. So let me ask you this. So later on in the video, after the clip cut off, because like I said, I watched a lot more of this early. So later on in the video, he was talking about how he is not a racist, but he grew up in a racist home. So my question to you is, if somebody grows up racist, can they change to not be racist, or is that always with them? Because it's part of the original programming.
No. Especially, the one thing about it is he's at least conscious about it, at least partially, even if he's still in denial, because he's not really being totally accountable by saying, based in, his upbringing was based in ignorance. No, it was intentional. And so I'm looking for it because I remember I was talking about these conversations, and it was during the aftermath of the Jordan Davis trial, and I forget her name. I think it was Nancy Grace was holding, ironically enough, similar to what we're doing right now, but it was on, MSNBC. Mm-hmm. And she was talking to one of the lawyers, and I forget his name. And I was sitting here trying to find it while, you guys were talking. But he was talking about, because she was saying how scary it is to imagine a world where people thought like the killers of Jordan Davis and Trayvon Martin. And he said, "Well, have you ever been in a room where it was just white people?" Like he said, "I've been in a room where as soon as a black person left and it was only white people there, the conversation turned and it changed, and all we talked about were black people, and the things that were said were so vicious and so vile that it'll make your skin crawl." He said, "We have to stop pretending that these conversations, these ideologies don't exist
Right.
in America. They do, and they do all the time. And you can tell when you're somewhere, and you can tell because not only is it verbal conversation, they have very nonverbal ways, nonverbal cues of communicating with each other when we're in their presence.
The same way we do.
Right. Well, see, theirs is more nuanced.
Yeah.
We do it from the perspective of who the heck you looking at. They do it from the perspective of this little thing of ours. You know what I'm saying? And so, and we play dumb because we really, and that's what bothers a lot of black people about the potential of Trump winning the next election, is because we would rather our racists be beneath the surface instead of bubbling cup runneth over. I'm quite the opposite.
Yeah, I prefer mine up front.
Yeah, I prefer my racism, sunny side up, please.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? With toast.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think about the whole concept, I think about, you say ignorant, well, and how it's fed to you. Archie Bunker, who was a prime television figure, prime television character on The Family in the 70s and the 80s, would be the prime example of ignorance. But because he was raised sort of like to believe that that's just the way things are. But it's still intentional on what he was trying to teach his daughter. Her resistance, and Rob Schneider, who was affectionately referred to as Meathead, his resistance most so was the pushback to the racist ideology that Archie Bunker was exhibiting, this naturally out of his pores. And I think that's one of the things that we would see with dealing with this guy that was talking about trying to sort of like flush out what he's been taught.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a daily struggle for him because it's hardwired into him at a very young age.
Right. Right. That is
you
part
taught
of your original programming.
right from the ages of like 2 to 5 is when you learn the most about who your character is going to be, character shaping, and this is taught through, and I think I was talking about earlier, through a form of groupthink, which comes from the Tavistock Institute out of England, and the whole notion of training people to think a certain way, to move a certain way, to identify with certain things. I mean, we look at the effectiveness of this, and you have black families, and I keep going back to black families because I think that's only the only way we could truly understand how detrimental, like to us, this has been, but also how provincial it's been to those who are of the white community.
Well, you're not far off though, because think about. Let me tie this dynamic in. Remember, he was talking about growing up in a racist family and a small white section of racist white people in a majority black town. They were poor white people in a majority black town, and he was forced to go to the public school and congregate with the black people because his family, his racist white family, didn't have enough money to be rich racists. So this is persist. So this mindset is persisting alongside the mindset you're talking about.
Oh, and no doubt. the thing I was going to point to is the doll baby experiment, where you ask both black and white children which is the good doll and which is the bad doll, and they've done this this experiment decade after decade after decade, starting in the 70s, and the results are still the same. The black child is the bad child, the black child is the ugly child, the white child is the good child, the white child is the child that everybody wants. And but there is a hidden danger. Not so hidden, but there is a danger historically of this rhetoric when it is pushed and put into place. Because we have to remember, it's very important that we talk about that demographic you just spoke of. Because that demographic is the most likely to act on these particular innuendos that they've been taught. They're the ones that will march and storm the January 6th Capitol. They're the ones that burnt down Rosewood. They're the ones who burnt down and I wrote down Forsyth, Georgia, specifically, because it speaks to a time, because there was, these black Wall Streets all over the place. Forsyth, Georgia was one of them. And when a brother was doing a documentary on him, he went into the library to look at the periodicals of that time. And the librarian knew exactly what he was looking for, took him to the page he was looking for. And when he went to the page, the clipping of the massacre, the race massacre, was clipped out of the page. And he asked her what happened to it. And she spoke in a very hushed and shameful term. Yeah, we're not very proud of that moment in our history. But see, the thing is, if you're not very proud, then you would speak about acts of redemption.
Maintenance.
Like you would literally think about reparations, how you repaired the communities you destroyed.
So that's not ignorance.
Right. No. It's taught, it's cultural. It's a cultural understanding. And see, this is why I get mad at us for not wanting to be a monolith. Because even in a monolith, you can have your diversity, but understand what happens to one black person affects us all.
Right.
The acts of one black person affects us all. And we all pay the consequence. We don't get to saddle up and push that person to the side and say they're exception to the rule. Like Patrick said, the so-called good behaving Negro is the exception to the rule. And what was said in the 80s, in the 90s, is when black people meet a white person and that white person is nice to them, they say, oh shit, white people are cool. Y'all not like what we watched on TV and this, that, and the other. When white groups will meet a black person and that black person melded and blended in and didn't cause any trouble, they would say, oh, we like you. You're different than the other ones. And so that was the saying in the 70s, 80s, and the 90s in terms of the hardwired impression of black people that white folk had.
Right. And
still goes on to this day.
It's also an extension of group power. Like going back to what Dr. Amos said, individual power is connected to group power. So think about it. We have situations like this particular town. It's a majority black town. You have we have a small opposing white contingent, and that small white group usually has more real power than the black people. The black people may be face of positions, but the white people really control the things behind the scenes. That's individual power and group power, but that's critical mass power. But that critical mass power is reinforced by the group power. But the system of white supremacy is in place. So it can have offshoots in these spaces. White supremacy can exist in majority black spaces and still operate the same way it needs to operate because of the whole system that's in place.
Well, it's a dominant culture.
Right.
And so when you're the dominant force, it doesn't, like, numbers don't matter.
Right.
So
Basically.
and that's also why when a lot of the solutions-based conversations we have, Even when I hear people talking about us breeding white people out of existence, you, you're gonna breed white individuals out of existence. You're not gonna breed white culture out of it.
Right.
If you could drop, and PC was to be PC, and I was talking about this yesterday. If a lot of these people could drop everything that identifies them culturally as non-white today, they would. And most of them are actively trying to. They're not code switching because of any other reason than they want to get rid of the blackness. For a lot of them, I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them they practice code switching at home. They practice code switching in only black places. They're still acting like they're at work. They're still the polar bear, like with the fur on. They're still maneuvering this way. That's not code switching for survival. That's code
Code
switching because you want to fit in. That's not even code switching. That's trying to transform. That's like changing the way. That's change. So, like, but that's a failure of us to really understand. And I agree with PC. I have so many problems, and I start thinking maybe it's the technical Ted part of me, because I'd be like, first off, the fuck is wrong with being a monolith? Like being a solid, sturdy, rigid structure that is impenetrable. That sounds cool to me.
You got to understand group dynamics to get that though.
Right, but even in that, monoliths have weak points. Monoliths are made up. It's not like a monolith is one big atomic structure. No, it's made up of millions to trillions of different divergent pieces.
He's explaining to you, he's explaining that because white supremacy is a monolith. He's explaining to you how this monolith is continued to be taught and passed down from generation to hey, we don't even watch them colors on TV. We are so better than them. They can't even be on our TV screens. That's monolithic.
Go ahead, PC. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead, PC.
No, I'm just saying he's right.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, man, we talk about power like it's a bag of chips. You want some? You know, power makes you powerful. Who the hell in their right mind wants to share or give up power?
Nobody. That's why we need to stop begging.
But see, here's the thing. Black people understand this far better than we give them credit for. These Negroes are not stupid. It's what Patrick just said. Black people have been in a full-on rebellion for about 150 freaking years. And the full-on rebellion is against being black. If we can just wash this shit off, I'm light-skinned. I would be considered too dark by some of these Negroes. Because if we can just wash this blackness off and show the white man that we are just, they'll invite us into their society. You know, here I go with the impressions again. But I'm just saying, man, it's, and so when white folk talk about white nationalism and white pride, things of that nature, the only part that bothers me is the fact that black people don't feel as strong about being black as they do about being white. If we did, we would defend it. And we would be. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, we get mad. We get mad that white people express they group love instead of, like you saying, instead of us expressing the group love and being like, hey, y'all white power, black power. Well, we get mad. They shouldn't be doing that. Like, why?
No, I mean, the part, here's the thing. I keep saying here's the thing. What scares black people is that they know when white folk get mad, they'll paint what was the guy with the of the Marvel comic
Stan.
No, the dude with the glove.
Thanos. When
Thanos told one boy, I will paint the starways with your blood. That's what black people see when white folk get mad. And that's why black folk are scared of white nationalism. But if black folk understood and started standing with each other and stopped seeing each other as the ops, like in Philly, we got a Philly gang map where black people see each other as the ops, checkered all over the damn city. And I'm pretty sure a lot of cities have gang maps that have that same distinction. Well, see, we see each other as the ops. We have no problem with taking each other out as the ops. But our real ops don't have no problem taking us out. And so
He's just explaining that.
right. So when we start protecting ourselves and protecting each other and understanding, you don't have to love me, but let's have a mutual understanding that I need you and you need me. And I need you to have my six and you need me to have your back. Then maybe, just maybe. But see, we want to avoid the fact that this is a war. We'll talk all around it. Oh, this is social injustice. Ain't no social injustice when you're the only one getting your ass whooped. It's a war. You know? And we want to run away from it because we're cowardly when it comes to that. And then we have diarrhea of the mouth and we want to debate every goddamn body. But at the same time, your enemy is in the woods sleeping in a damn school bus, skinning a deer with like 16 M16s and AR-15s.
You dehumanize a group of people because you're preparing to wipe them out. Warfare.
Yeah.
We don't look at them on our screens. We don't be around them. We don't talk about them. They are beneath us. We're better than them. So when it comes to taking them out, we wouldn't have any problems taking them out because they're not human. They're not like us. So we can take them out. So we're going to pass this down generation to generation to generation to generation. So all of us know, as many of us know, the white supremacists are saying, as many of us know that black people are inferior, white people are superior, and we have to keep them under us. That's what this young man was explaining. His parents was talking to him about.
Bruh, listen, and I know Pat ready to jump in, so I'm going to say this last thing and I'm going to shut up for a while. I taught a class when I was at Harcum College. I taught a class. I actually wrote the curriculum. I rewrote the curriculum for the art of history because I wanted to make sure that it detailed how art through not through paintings, but also through comic strips, then eventually leading to screenplay and film, how it created and instituted, put forth the institution of white supremacy while demonizing black people from the same point in time. And from the first vestiges of film, you had black people demonized as zombies in league with the dark one. That was the first horror film, first horror genre. Mm-hmm. You had newspapers. Understand, less than 50% of America, we're not even talking about blacks, 50% of America at the time could read past the third grade level 100 years ago. So you had cartoons, the political comics, the comics we love so much started off as political comics to explain the politics of that day to people who couldn't read. And the first thing they put in those comics, those political comics, if they weren't tearing down white politicians, they were drawing black men as werewolves or as big as orangutans and apes with fangs, blood dripping from their mouths, carrying a white girl. It later became the movie King Kong, which also was based on boxing great Jack Johnson, right? All these things were put together to create this horror story and legitimize lynchings of black people. This same thing, the same group we're talking about, how it was spoon-fed. You got pictures of them as children at lynchings that were put on postcards and sold throughout the country. They had literally were posting their local newspapers about the upcoming lynching. Make sure you bring your lunch because we're going to have a picnic because we're picking a nigga. And you still got black people today talking about having picnics. So this spoon-fed, some of it was spoon-fed, some of it was a buffet.
Well, that's what he said. Sometimes you take big gulps.
Right.
You know.
And that's what we're dealing with right now. And that's not just the underbelly, undercurrent. That's the lifeblood of America. So with that, I land my plane.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that so I didn't go back to something PC said earlier when he was talking about how these are the dangerous ones. And I wanted to explain that a little bit from my perspective.
Chameleon.
Well, because even to that, like I went to school with a broke white kid when I was in grade school in Tallahassee. Because Joe, it's really the only time we interacted with them was when they was broke. Because they kind of got their whole own little world over there. Back then, it was in the Kalaran area. Now, I guess Kalaran
Yeah,
is
because
not it no more.
You had the IB ones, you had the country Woodville ones, then you had the ones that lived in the projects with us.
Yeah, and this is back when Leonard Weston was still open. I'm talking about elementary school.
You're talking about the 90s. Then.
Yeah. So, and I remember there was only 2 white kids in the whole school at Leonard Weston when I was there. And when one of them white boys got mad, the string of shit that came out of his mouth, surrounded by black people.
You'd be surprised how many niggas
he ain't give no fucks. And in that situation with everybody talking about what they woulda, shoulda, coulda did, nobody did nothing to him. And we've seen this repeat ad nauseum throughout history. I mean, Zimmerman is anyways. So the point I'm making here is though, a lot of the times we frame these conversations making white people the standard without even realizing it as black people. And then like I wanna kind of go into the Trump angle. Remember how mad black people were when Trump said, "Come on, black people, you got nothing else to lose. Why not vote for me?" How insulted black people felt.
Yep.
But then we look at how we talk about broke white people. Why are y'all affiliated with racism, white supremacy? Y'all might as well affiliate with us. Y'all in the same conditions we in. You're literally telling them the same thing that you got pissed off when somebody said it to you. And so in there, I think there's a failure to really think about psychologically what's going on. To these broke white people that make up the vast majority of the foot soldiers of this shit, like what this man would have been, and I do agree with PC. I definitely think he still has that in him.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, no, that's definitely still there. Like, and if you haven't taken active steps, therapy, and a bunch of other things, and you aren't doing stuff regularly, that's still there.
Because the way he sound like he's maybe at the beginning stages of even really being honest with himself out loud about it.
Yeah, no, that's still there. But the thing is, all they have is their whiteness. That's what makes them dangerous. See, a rich motherfucker, you threaten their whiteness, I'm still rich. And I got shit to lose. If all I got is my whiteness and I ain't got nothing else, and you threaten that, oh motherfucker, we got a problem. A big one. Because you ain't even on my level to be threatening my whiteness. Like I don't give a fuck what you got millions, billions, trillions of dollars. You are not on my level to threaten my whiteness.
But going back to what you were saying though, not all, but there's a good majority, I ain't gonna say good majority, there's a good number of white people that when they get mad, you become all type of niggas. They swear they're not racist.
No,
But if nigga comes out, if you're a white person and you get mad at black people, and nigga comes out your mouth, you are exposing your upbringing. You're exposing your roots. You're exposing your foundation, and you are exposing your racism. It is showing.
No, but that's and that's exactly the point I'm making is we got to understand, like this dude was getting groomed and probably still is on the subconscious level a white supremacy foot soldier.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to understand that when we approach these people with these conversations where we're trying to tear them down, what you're tearing down is their culture. The only thing they have left, their whiteness. And they respond viciously because you are tearing down the only thing they have. The moment you understand that, that's the moment you realize how dangerous these conversations you keep trying to have all. This is why they respond physically and violently when somebody tries to hold them accountable for being white. The fuck you
You
mean?
can't. We're not in the position to hold them accountable.
And that's why they respond the way they do. Oh, you gonna hold me accountable? Watch what
No,
this whiteness do for you,
no.
and watch what happened to me after I do it to you.
Right, right. Because of the system that's in place to overall protect them. Of
Well,
course,
I
what
just
just
think I just want to finish this. I just think again, and this I'm just doubling back. We need to pay more attention to the psychology of what's happening with these people. And to me, for black people that are not informed,
we gotta learn our
that's
people.
what this video does.
We have to learn our enemies. Right. That's that when I saw this video, it that's what it sparked. We have to learn our enemies.
yeah. I mean, you got Dylan Roof, because that's who this guy could have been, right? Roll up into Emmanuel Baptist Church down there in Charleston, South Carolina, and sit with the parishioners, and then literally told them what he was going to do to them and killed them. You know, you have, I think I wrote something down. I was about to write something down, but when you got these cats out here who really aren't trying to take none of this stuff seriously. That's why when you know, in a big ideal about the rift between black men and black women right now is looking at the values that are put out there for relationships and things of that nature. And when I hear people talk, nobody talks about the importance of the black family and the role it plays in nation building. Nobody talks about that. They talk about these intangibles or tangibles that can be obtained for this life in the fantasy world that could be snuffed out in a minute because this guy over here living in the sticks is mad that you got a piano in your living room, which is what happened in Rosewood. At least the movie. Let me be clear about that. We're not looking at this from the lens of every day is a dangerous one. And this is this is when we struggle with being accountable for each other and being accountable for ourselves in the place of this. We want to be rugged individualists when it comes to these situations and not understanding the group impact. The culture. We see the culture. You can't escape your blackness even if you wanted to, even if you tried. At the end of the day, it's going to be the one thing held against you. There was two quotes that I could think of when Patrick was talking. One quote was from George Wallace, the former racist governor in the late 50s, I believe, of Alabama. And he said, if blacks and poor whites ever realized they had more in common than they didn't, you know, they could take over the South. But you can't get poor whites to work with blacks. And then and that's because of that cultural thing that that they tied to, which was tethered into specifically Southern whites, tethered into them after losing the Civil War.
Yeah.
This was something we talk about, the Daughters of the Confederacy, United Daughters of the Confederacy, and what they went around and impressed upon and what they built. These are spoon feeding babysitters in the curriculum and the monuments and all these different things, honoring the esteemed gentlemen of the South. Then you have another quote, Lyndon B. Johnson, when he said, white people, poor whites, if all you can convince them of is the importance of their whiteness,
Yep.
then you can, you know, you can literally take a $20 bill out of their pocket. You know what I'm saying? As long as you have them focused on the gains of black people. I'm summarizing it, but
Maintenance.
Yeah. So
Mindset.
yeah.
Maintenance. I mean, it's passing down culture. It's reinforcing whiteness. We were divided by race for a reason. How can the system of white supremacy maintain if people see ourselves beyond our race, beyond the skin color, beyond the distinctions that the differences that we have, rather? You have to remind us about our differences. You have to reinforce white supremacy.
Because there was one time when poor whites and blacks worked together in this country, in the 1600s, where you had the indentured servants who were working off their jail sentences or whatever from Britain and Ireland over here, and they were on the same plantations, working, tilled the same fields as Africans who were brought over here. And they were having uprisings all over the place, and that's literally how the whole notion of race became as simple as black and white.
Well, yeah, they told them, hey man, y'all white. Y'all white. Y'all like us, y'all white, so y'all ain't got to toil with them. You might be broke like them, but you white, so you know you get the privilege of being white, so you ain't got to rock with them no more.
They gave them freedom dues, and they told us all you have to do is police those niggers.
And it's all they like, oh, for real?
Oh,
well, you know, we ain't really like them like that anyway, though. You know what I'm saying? Wait, white, we white. That's why I wore this white shirt. So
gang.
Right. You know what I'm saying? But it's you know, we're having fun, but it's Pete, what we're saying. Pete, the overall tone of this whole video, the overall message is white supremacy is something that has to be reinforced. It has to be passed down. Group dynamics have to exist. Group differences have to exist. White people have to see themselves as better than us. They have to see themselves as different than us. They have to separate themselves, and they have to integrate themselves at the same time. Don't get the system twisted, because part of the maintenance is the refinement of the system of white supremacy. So it's not supposed to look the same everywhere. And white supremacy is not going to look the same in the realm of poor white people, middle class white people, rich white people, or the ultra rich white people. It's all different, but it's all a part of the maintenance, but they all get the code of conduct. That's why it's still existing. And that's why that young man is telling his experience of his parent, his mother and his stepfather passing down white supremacy. And he himself probably unconsciously or even consciously will pass it down to his children.
And I just want to be clear, because I know Pat in the back, he getting the ribs ready to put on the grill. He about to cook. I can see it. Pat, I see it winding up. I'm not saying any of the things I'm saying. I'm sure we're not saying any of the things we're saying to sort of get black people to say, see, white people, if you just understood the social dynamics that we're living in, that you could join us.
Ain't got nothing to do with that. This ain't, no, this ain't got nothing to do with that.
You know, no. Alex Jones, the global elites.
You missing it.
No, this message is for you Negroes, black folk. Wake up and understand they're codified. Ain't shit you can do to convince them otherwise. You got people out here trying to marry into white families and then writing letters, Dear John, why are they still calling me niggers? Because you are to them. Stop trying to run away from your fate and your responsibility and your roles in terms of fixing what's wrong. Come home. What is that Jamaica commercial? Come home. All right? You Negroes need to come home and wake up, smell the coffee, and understand that, you know, you are in a war. Guess what? Ukraine didn't wake up one day and say, hey, I want to start a war with this big grizzly bear to my left. No. They ended up in a war, and they had to fight for their lives, and they're still fighting for their lives. And I'm just putting it out there because everybody knows about that war. You are in the war.
They're saying about your feelings.
You chose this shit or not, you're in the war.
They're saying about feelings and morals, man. Get off of that. Get off the feelings and morals and trying to appeal to people's sensibilities. Have these conversations. Once again, there's no conversation we're going to have to make them give up power, land, wealth, and resources. Forget it.
At all. At all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't give a damn what Jane Elliott said.
Well, that's why they ain't gave it up. How long she been doing this and they still ain't gave it up?
Since the day after Martin Luther King was assassinated. And by the way, condolences to the King family. You know, the recent loss of Dexter King.
Wow. So, man, you know, that's That's all we got to say about that. So fatlifestation.com, 7 p.m. Make sure you check it out. Link is in the description. Make sure you go support the big homie as he do his thing on fatlifestation.com. Everything else is in the description. How you want to support, how you want to follow. I need to add my TikTok. You can catch me. What's my TikTok? Because I've been putting a lot of stuff on TikTok. So hold up. You heard that. Hold up. It's at the Joe Ward. At the Joe Ward. I'll put that in the description as well. You can follow me on TikTok. I've been putting most of my stuff on TikTok. I'm trying to grow my TikTok, a social media platform outside of YouTube. So follow your homeboy on TikTok. And let's keep doing this.
Show Joe some love, y'all.
Yeah.
You know, too many times we see y'all watching these videos. Y'all want to have an opinion.
Hit that like button.
Hit that like button. Hit the Cash App. Also, super chat.
Yes. Drop no comments, super like, super chat, all that. And drop no comments. Even if you disagree, drop it. We welcome disagreement. We just welcome rational and logical disagreement. Because hey, we don't know it all. So we welcome all type of comments. Let's just have real conversations and let's not be fighting it in my comments. All right. So I love y'all. Catch the next video coming up.